Done. All right. So just a couple housekeeping things here. We're recording, and at the end of today, you're going to receive an email from your consultant with a copy of the slides as well as a recording in your inbox. Everybody is on mute, and that's to help recording. We're going to encourage you that you use your chat feature, which you can find in your toolbar on the webinar. If you have any questions, you're going to want to use that chat feature too, because we're going to be doing some polling and some interactive activity at the very end around a case study too. So your speakers today, you're going to be kicking it off with me. I am Laura Caton. I'm partner and senior consultant at the Cornerstone Group. And then after I've set the stage, I'm going to be turning this over to Jeff.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jeff Sassoni, the Director of Executive Development with the Cornerstone Group. And I'll be taking Laura's content, all the information that she'll be covering, and we'll be applying it to a case study to help us to really think about how do you apply this in a real work situation. So you'll hear me chiming in a little bit later this afternoon.
Okay, so this should be just about an hour long, just to kind of set some expectations. And I want to start off with a quick conversation around endurance. You know, as the past 3 and 4 weeks have gone on, you know, we were in full mobility mode, right? As a business and as individuals, we were thrust into a remote workforce if we had not been in one before, trying to understand structurally and from a people perspective, how do we work remote? How do we maintain business? And now we're at this point where we're really deep into this now, right? So the Zoom parties and all the things that we were doing in the beginning, isn't it funny? My kids here, my cat and my dog are barking and meowing in the background. That has kind of worn off a little bit right now for a lot of people. And people are getting really tired and they're getting a little burnt out. But this is an endurance program here, guys. We're in a marathon, and everybody handles stress and pressure differently, and everyone has different levels of capacity around that too. And even if you think about business wise, industries are affected even differently throughout this too. If you're in construction and you're a government bid construction group, you're still working. But if you're in construction and you're not part of that infrastructure part of construction, you're not in business right now. You're actually starting to shut down. If you're in retail, your stores are closed and you're just hoping that your e-com team is driving revenue so that when you can get back into the distribution center and do pick, pack, and ship, you're starting to build some revenue again. If you're in healthcare, you're certainly crazy Mach 7 with your hair on fire. And if you're in community banking and credit unions, you're also looking at a time where your commercial lending department, your mortgage lending department, they're crazy busy with all of the SBA, all the loan forgiveness programs. It's a lot to take on. And then so outside industry, even people within organizations are feeling this differently from a positional perspective. C-suites looking at contingency plans, trying to figure out if they have to change the strategy for the second half of the year. HR is crazy buried by, you know, the payroll pack, also, you know, the new family leave program, maintaining some level of assurance with people in the organization that maybe were struggling with some mental health issues. That's even more exacerbated now. So everyone is feeling this whole thing a little bit different. But the thing is, this isn't going to last forever, but it is going to last for a while. And so behavior has a huge impact on how we endure these things. So really, our goal today is to provide some insight into how our behavior maybe plays into our response to how we process decisions and how we communicate and who we go to for information. And we're hoping that you can use this information to create some better engagement with your team. We're going to give you some practical management guidance as we go through each of the behavioral drives. And we're going to help you understand how PI tools can help you unpack how to connect with people. And then Jeff is going to take us into making the information more actionable by working through a case study where you're going to be participating and sharing your insights. So this is kind of like a PI test for you guys to see if you've been paying attention, to help weigh in and share with us what you would do as you walk through each employee situation. Now, I want to start off with something. I want all of you, because I know you all have this right in front of you right now, your cell phone. I want you to grab your cell phone and I want you to go into a web browser. And when you get to the web browser, I want you to type the address www.menti.com. And when you get there, you're going to be prompted by a screen that looks like this. Please enter the code. I'd like you to enter the code 646254. So again, 646254. You're going to come to a very quick survey. And what we're asking for you to do is weigh in on the things that we give you here, the top 3 that have the most impact on you right now as you're going through this COVID crisis. So top 3, if you can tell us the top 3 things that are weighing on your mind right now as we go through this crisis. And I'm going to share some results with you. Give it another second. Okay, so this is really interesting. So, I started this last week with one organization, and now this is the 3rd webinar that we've done this week, and had individuals weigh in. And the adapting to rapid change is kind of a 2-part piece, right? It's both, am I naturally built to adapt to change, rapid change? And how do I process new information, flying at me? But also it could be adapting to rapid change from an infrastructure perspective. As I said earlier, as you move into remote status, not everybody was built to go remote. It's hard to go remote when you're a credit union, right? It may be easier to go remote if you're a different type of business. So adapting to change is huge. And that is 22% of what everyone is saying. So this is over now 5 separate webinars. So this is big. And the second one has stayed the same too, isolated and disconnected. So while we're moving really fast and there's a lot of change going on, that can feel massively uncomfortable for a lot of people. And now I'm isolated and I'm disconnected to my team, to management, to the organization. Now, what has changed since our last few webinars, though, is that now there's a 50-50 split between what has always been number 3. It was lack of clarity around expectations. When you're isolated and disconnected from leadership and from the organization, then you're starting to wonder, like, what's expected of me? Is it the same as it was when I was working in the company with everybody, or have expectations changed, and do I know what those are? You guys have now kind of increased the percentage to making timely decisions. So it's interesting. I'm moving really fast. I might be chasing my tail. Maybe I'm not making decisions as quickly as I could because potentially I'm kind of freezing in place. I'm not sure really what's expected. So there's a lot going on right now. And you're saying this from a management perspective. So I want you to think about what would be going on with your employment team too, right? So what you're feeling, they're feeling the same things. And some of this is behavior. So thank you for weighing in on this. We're actually going to be pulling some of this information together for a leave behind in the next week or so. So let me get back to the webinar itself. As I said, some of this is definitely behavior driven. And as all of you know, there are 4 key factors that determine workplace behavior. And stress can most certainly amplify those behaviors. And I want to start very quickly with, recognizing the mental health toll this has on everybody, whether you have an underlying mental health issue or not. Everyone is feeling anxious. We're all feeling some level of like depression and letdown, that disconnection. Make sure your employees understand what your EAP program is and how they can get connected to that, because everyone deals with stress differently. So be very flexible with your methods as you're managing each individual employee. And our emotions really do impact our personal effectiveness and sense of well-being. So whether we realize it or not, so take care of yourself as well, because what's really important to most of your employees is what their bullet point outlines here. In 2018 and 2019, when PI did their people management study, one of the top 20 criteria for a really strong manager was someone who remained calm and cool in the face of pressure. The reality is this: we're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. But even owning up to and being transparent about, you know what, I'm not feeling that great either, is really reassuring for the team. We have a Friday morning call on the Cornerstone Group. Steve is really good as our CEO about connecting with all of us, bringing a level of empathy and making sure that we all talk about what's going on in our life first before we get down to business. And he even owned up today that he was feeling a little stressed this week as well, and maybe even not as connected one particular day. So it happens to everybody. Sharing that is important. And it also means getting back to basics with behavior. Why you brought the tool on to begin with, it was never just about hiring. It has always been about how can we utilize this information for coaching and managing too. And recognizing how your behavior impacts your own personal performance as you lead your team is really important. So having some self-awareness time, looking at your own pattern and unpacking how you perform on these situations is important. But it also means going back to some basics. And if I remember when you went through training, we talk a lot about the self and the self-concept graph. The self-concept graph is about how we're modifying at the time we take the assessment our behaviors to work more successfully in the environment we're in based on inbound communication. But the self graph is who we are and how we're hardwired. And remember, stick a fork in you by your mid-20s, you're cooked. So if you're trying to figure out why is this person reacting and responding the way they are, I want you to go back and look at the self graph, because when stress and pressure hits, we always go back to who we naturally are. Our natural MO is our most comfortable place. It's where we're most confident. So I really want to encourage you to look at that. And as you look at that, start to understand how does each of these individual behaviors tie to what's their communication style and what do they need? What's their need for structure and support from me as their manager or a team? How much social interaction do they need and what type? And how are they going to most likely make decisions? So again, go back to the data, go back to the tools that you have on your software to really understand how to approach people. And as a quick refresher, remember, we're measuring behavior on a continuum. We're looking at really how much do you have? Do you have a lot of a particular behavior, or do you have a lower level of a behavior? We all have all four. We all have levels of dominance and extroversion and patience and formality. If our behavioral drives or your employees' behavioral drives are to the right, then they have more of that particular behavior. If it's to the left, they have a lower level of that particular behavior. They still have it though. And so remember, dominance, extroversion, patience, and formality, that's what we're measuring. Dots to the right mean that they have a higher level of that behavior, and dots to the left mean they have a lower level of that particular behavior. And so now I'm going to go into each of these behaviors, and I'm going to discuss with you reactions and needs based on where each of these drives fall. So when we talk about higher dominance people, right, what do they need? And really when we're looking at facing adversity, which we are right now, who do they look to? High dominance people look to themselves. They heavily rely on what they know, what they can pull together from an intel perspective. And then they're very good at taking what they've learned and then kind of running with it on their own. They're very self-contained and very self-confident and very self-motivated. And the directionally, how do they approach this new normal is by kind of like going within a little bit. They're looking for abilities to influence decisions, maybe change direction for the business. They want to know big picture. Have we changed anything from a strategy perspective? Is our team looking to do something different? And so what's the big picture for our future as an organization and a company? What's it going to look like when we go back to the office? And are we as an organization, or can I be opportunistic right now? Because maybe there are opportunities that weren't there before. And not only that, I'm really happy to kind of challenge and poke holes and stuff. So can I challenge existing ways of how we've done business? Because now's the time for us to be thinking different. So they are looking for control and impact on what's going on right now. So as much as you can, bring them into bigger picture conversations, whether it's team or it's organizational, it's really important. But if I'm lower in dominance, what am I looking for? Where and who on my team? So where is everybody? Where are they located? How can I get a hold of them? And who's still on my team? If you've had a furlough or layoffs, they're trying to figure out, who do I still get to connect with? Who am I still working with? And more importantly, I want to know that, because when we go back to normal business and I walk into the office, there's going to be some survivor grief here. I'm going to be looking for the people that I've always worked with, and they're not there anymore. So it's important for them to be looped into what changes have been made from a team perspective. And if I'm reporting to somebody different, let me know and give me an opportunity to connect with that person and to kind of share and start to build that relationship. You need to really stay in touch with people who are lower in dominance, because they're looking for your support. They're looking for manager support and leadership support. They're looking for a better understanding of what are corporate expectations, because they want to follow those. And they also want to know, am I doing what I should be doing? So they can feel very disconnected and a little adrift, because they're not quite sure. I know what I was doing when I was in the office, but now I'm not quite sure what you're expecting me to do. So they need that surety from you that what they're doing is right, or actually direct them in the areas where they should be working most. And they want to know what leadership is saying. And it doesn't necessarily mean you, unless you're in the C-suite. They want to hear what the CEO and upper management has to say. What's going on industry-wise? What's going on with our business? And how are things going to look when we all come back? If I'm an extrovert, what am I looking for? Communication and community needs. So when I look at a high extrovert, where do they go for information? Just about everywhere. They're talking to everybody. They're picking up the phone. They're on webinars. They're reading articles. They're talking to people in the industry. They're talking to their peers. They're talking to their teammates. And so they're constantly looking for information. And then they want to kind of share that with everybody else internally in the team, and share best practices. So they're probably right now fully absorbed in a lot of conversations. Make sure they're having the right ones. And they need social interaction with their group. And they also want to be part of any game-changing activities. So they're really, remember, the bridgers in your division and in your organization. They bridge and connect relationships. So make sure you touch base with them to say, we're thinking of doing this, X, changing something. Who internally have we not brought into this process? They're the people that can share that with you. As I said, they like to report everything back to the troops. They want to collaborate on projects. If you have new projects that you want to initiate, get them involved in that. The downtime is really not great for extroverts. They really want to make sure that they're still involved in the game a little bit. So give them lots of face time. Communication should be visual. It should be auditory. And make sure that you're keeping those town halls or those huddles. If I'm more introspective, though, I'm looking for less noise, and I'm looking for more time to kind of collect my thoughts and reason through some of these changes and what that means to me from an operational or an efficiency perspective, and how I'm going to communicate maybe to my client base or people internally in a way that is calm and cool and reasoned. I need opportunities to build some efficiencies and systems and shore up some processes. I'm an introvert, and the first thing I did was went into operational mode, trying to figure out how we could shore up our onboarding of new clients. So kind of like recrafting that whole thing. That's what keeps me focused and energized. So anything you can give somebody who's more introspective, a focus activity, giving them a lot of data and facts to make some really sound decisions and maybe bring some operational efficiencies to your business will keep them engaged. Making sure that you're shooting them emails. Does not have to be face-to-face like this, but giving them communication they can go back and read and reread again. Patience, activity and stability. And what's interesting about patience is about the mobilization piece, right? So in the beginning, everybody was mobilized, high and low patience people, by getting things done. We had to be. And if you look at high patience people, the time to process in this kind of new normal is probably ramped up a little bit. So for me, if you're asking me to make decisions, and I have a lot flying at me right now, and I'm not able to kind of step back, take a deep breath and make a decision, you have to build in some extra buffer time for decision making for them. And you have to figure out a way to bring in some consistency and stability in their daily life too. That means have a consistent call cadence with them. You're going to touch base every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at this time, so that they feel some structure and some consistency in what they can expect on a day in and day out basis. look to support them from a team perspective too, because remember, HiC Patients people like stability and they like consistency with their team. Again, any team changes, you need to let them know what it is. Any process changes, you need to let them know what that is so they can figure out how does that work in their new environment. And adding pressure and additional activities and maybe shorter timelines to people who are hiring patients, as our good friend Kaylin says, is no bueno. They need to take time to do their best work. So remember, you may need to buffer some extra time in decision making. And low patience people, well, they are naturally energized by change and think opportunistically and are energized to move things forward, can be feeling really burnt out right now and frustrated because they can't drive things fast enough. They can't get a hold of people. They can't close business. They can't make decisions quick enough because people are all over the place. And it can feel very frustrating for low patience people who have low stability. And what are they doing? Sitting in their kitchen right now. So when things need to be mobilized, this is your team mobilization, right? They have a real quick response to what's happening and how they can drive it. Give them a lot of activities to stay focused. Help them support the changes in your organization, and then get these two behaviors together when you're building a team, because you need people who can cut bait and initiate, and you need people who can bring really good process to a new situation in your office. And the last behavior is formality. So the new remote status changes the structure game completely. You might not have a lot of structure. You might not have things written down as far as like what status quo, what needs to be done. And your high formality people are really feeling massively uncomfortable about this. They need a lot of clarity around expectations and execution of daily output, how you want me to report in, how you want me to share information with you. And so for them, just like the HiC Patients person, structured calls are critical. Ones where they have an opportunity to come to you with, hey, I have a list of things that I really want to go through. This is what they're looking for. They're looking for details. They're looking for you to help them stay organized and make sure they don't forget things. And so anything that you can bring from a structured discipline perspective, where they have what Jeff would talk a little bit about is like, you know, a good rudder. So they understand I'm moving in the right direction and I'm following the right rules. So be very specific. And low formality people, while they might be really creative and innovative and helping you kind of increase some agile activities like I talk about here, they may need you to provide more structure for them now than ever. Keep them focused on working on the right things, not a lot of things at the same time and not finishing anything. Making sure that when they're communicating corporate message to clients, that they're communicating it the way you want them to, not their own creative sling at it. So now more than ever, you need these people to stay super focused on making sure that things are very buttoned up. So that's a quick review of the 4 behaviors and where we would like you to really to be focusing when you're coaching and managing people. I want you to know that we are here for you. We're going to be walking into the case study with Jeff right now, but I just want to quickly say you will get this follow-up email. It's going to include our survival guide, our crisis toolkit, and manager toolkit. You're going to get a link to book some time with Kaylin if you need some software time as well. But I'm also going to make the offer. All of your consultants are more than happy to do this webinar for your management team, for your organization alone. Should you want that, please let your consultant know. Please set up time, one-on-one time with your consultant to talk through a more customized action plan for your organization. That's why we're here. We want to help you, and we hope that you and your families are safe. And I am going to now turn this whole thing over to my friend Jeff here so he can start the whole case study.
There we go. Sorry about the delay there. All right, you can hear me okay, Laura? Very good. Okay, all right. So let me set this up a little bit. So obviously we have a lot of information from Laura related to the predictive index. I believe, you know, most people, if not everybody, attending this webinar have some kind of background in the predictive index. So what we want to do is say, okay, all this information, what does that look like? You know, what would it look like in a real world situation? So we're going to bring you through this case study. I also want to set the expectation and reemphasize something Laura said. When you think about your personal life, when you think about if you have kids, your kids are home, everybody's home, it's a real disruption. And that puts stress on us, which of course plays out not just at home, but also at work. And then when you think about all the different meetings and the disruptions to meetings and the, how we do our work and the flow, more stress. So the point being, and you all feel this, that really does lead to us resorting back to our more natural behavioral tendencies on the job. And that really is reflected most in the self-profile. So as we go through the case study, really we're thinking about the self-profile. And again, in a real work situation, that's the profile you should be really attending to, because you're going to see more of that natural style of people coming out. The other thing that's important, and you've heard us say this before, there's a lot more to a human being than their PI profile. So in a real work situation, you're going to understand somebody's background, their experiences, their culture, their value system, etc. Right? And that's other information you'll bring in. But for the sake of the case study and thinking about PI, again, we're just going to be focusing on their profiles. So I just want to set that expectation. So what I'd like you to do right now is read the case study. This is the background, and this is the challenge. Read that. I'm going to give you about a minute, and then I'm going to bring you to the actual activity itself. So read the background, challenge, and I'll chime in just a minute and give you your assignment. Right, and I'm going to give you this information in just a second. So if you didn't finish reading or you want to refer back to it, I'll show you that information again. So what I'm going to have you do is consider the situation challenges in your team's PI profiles. How would you? And we're going to start with the head of sales. So how would you focus your head of sales? This is the person who kind of went rogue, email blast, etc. And if you look at the profile to the right, you can see that the head of sales, if you're familiar with reference patterns, is a captain, right? So think about this. So this is the head of sales, high A dominance, the person who feels comfortable working independently, very outcome driven, right? Confident in their opinions and direction, right? You kind of combine that with a low C patience. This person wants to move quickly. So very quick to act, to make decisions, a little impatient for results. The low patience person also, they like this variety, the change, the pace. So even though this is not a positive situation, they will likely be energized by this kind of situation, right? It sort of meets a lot of their needs. And then when you look at the high A dominance, low D formality, it's a very big picture perspective, right? Somebody's confidence in their ideas, their views of the world. They're not really tied to norms and process. So they can kind of look at things afresh, a new, broader view of the situation, and also incorporate different ways of thinking about things, right? They can be more innovative, right? Which also has its place in this type of situation. So, just a couple highlights of the head of sales. So going back to that case study, think about the situation and challenges. How would you focus your head of sales? All right, and just on the head of sales. So what I want you to do is think about this. And when you have some ideas about how to address this situation, put it in the chat. And in a couple minutes, Laura is going to read your chat responses, and then we'll have a discussion about it. I do want to say this group, more than the past two webinars, is a bit smaller. So I'd encourage people, just, put out your thoughts, put out your ideas. If you don't feel like you're, a PI savant, it's okay. Just put out whatever thoughts you have, and we'll work with that. All right, so to give you a couple minutes, we'll check back in and see what kind of solutions you came up with. All right, I'll give you another 20, 30 more seconds. Okay, Laura, what do we have? What are some of the solutions?
So the first one is immediately call the head of sales and discuss what is he doing and why, and what is his goal? Does he understand the whole picture?
Yeah, so one of the strengths, right, is that the embracing of that variety, the confidence just to move ahead in this unstructured situation. So we want to tap into that. We want to reinforce that, but we also want to make sure there are some parameters. So let's understand where they see their role, where they're coming from, and then let's kind of curtail it. Let's make sure that they have the right priorities. And something Laura said earlier is, it's really great to have all that energy and let's get it done and let's take this on. But if somebody's spread too thin, that strength that they can bring becomes a weakness. They might be stepping on other people's toes and they might get a little burned out. They're just taking on too much. So let's bring them in, let's prioritize, and let's bring in some focus. Excellent. What else?
I actually love the next person's input because they really took this to a whole nother level. They said the head of sales did things like this even before the changes, right? So it's a matter of reminding him that things are harder now and he has to involve production even more because he makes promises now. And then let him know he's just making himself and the company look bad.
Well, that's fantastic. So the assumption is these aren't new behaviors, but in this context, they even have more potential negatives, right? So going back to, maybe this person was attempting to adjust, as you might see in the self-concept. Now they're fully self, and you're seeing it hanging out there. This is another time to come back and say, okay, this is something we've talked about before, and let's talk about why it's even more critical right now in this situation. So yeah, going back to some perhaps previous conversations, and now we'll bring it to the current state. I love it. I love it. Very good. Anything else, Laura?
That's it.
Great. So, I just put out a few more things. Again, we want them making decisions. We want them taking charge. But again, you can make decisions in this box. So let's give them the freedom, but make sure we're curtailing it to a certain degree. The other part is, let's think about, again, in all of these cases, what are their needs based on the PI profile? How can they satisfy those needs, which will energize them and contribute to the business? So we can blend their needs and needs of the business. That's when you have something. So for example, you don't need to drum up sales right now, right? That's not the issue. They have enough backlog to last, hypothetically several months or maybe a year. But maybe they can play a role on the, customer side, maybe supporting in a role of like an account executive, right? They have the people skills, they understand the product, and they probably have those relationships. So this is a way to tap into that person, their skill set, in a way that's more beneficial for the organization. And the other thing to think about it as a CEO, you want somebody who is going to have that broad view. So let's bring them into your conversations. Let's step back. Let's take a look at what we're doing. And this is somebody who can be very innovative. The high A dominance, they can be very challenging. So let's see what they can contribute. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to take up all of their recommendations, but there's a great source of information there. Again, let's take what they can bring, utilize it, but also make sure we're putting some parameters around them generally. So perfect, very good. Right, so let's move on to the head of production quality. So how do you support the head of production quality? And again, just a refresher, looking at that profile, it's kind of a mix between an operator and a guardian. And this is somebody, if you look at that low A dominance and high D formality, this is somebody really built to remove risk. They're built to get it right. High need for precision, accuracy, somebody who you might expect in a production or quality role, right? But this is somebody who really needs that playbook. They're very good at following process and holding people accountable, right? very detail oriented, so not as big picture. This is also somebody who is very responsive and reactive to the environment. They might not necessarily be more proactive. So this is a situation now, you need them, you might want to think about that, what you need more of from them. All right, so a couple of these things as consideration. Let me also put out there, HiC Patients. This is somebody who is very good with repetition, routine, very calm, stable, not as adept to situations where you have pace in a large variety of situations. That can actually put a little bit of stress and take them out of their comfort zone. So thinking about that, how would you support your head of production quality? I'll give you another couple of minutes. Please chime in, put it in chat, anything that comes to mind. Love to hear it.
Do you have an airport near you?
Yes, but that's not the issue.
Okay.
It's my stomach, Laura. It's my stomach.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's a garage door opener down in the basement.
Okay.
20 more seconds, please.
Yeah, so I already have one comment if you want me to, I have actually a couple if you want me to start, Jeff.
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So work with them to find a way to structure their day, even though it isn't the same as before, and then connect with them daily, right? To make sure they feel they have the support that they need and they're not alone trying to resolve these issues.
Yeah, so let me address that. So a couple of things. One is, asking them, we need to find a way to bring structure, right? So a really good approach is to say, hey, listen, we need a production, time frame. We need a roadmap, but the assignment has to be a little bit more close-ended. So by Thursday, let's come up with a plan to meet, certain quota, and then put in some questions like, hey, how would you address this? How would you address that? What kind of support do you need, right? What are some contingency plans? So really give them a lot of structure and thought and allow them to create that roadmap. So people with a high D formality, they need clarity and structure, but they're also good at building it. So let's give them an assignment that allows them to actually do that and work with them. The other piece of that I love is, sometimes in these situations, the one-on-one meetings or the whole kind of way we work together is disrupted. So what I would say is you should even think about connecting with them more frequently. Maybe shorter meetings more frequently, because somebody with this kind of profile, they might not be as quick to make decisions, especially if there's a lot of risk. But if you can support their decisions or support their ideas, you remove the risk and you enable them to move more quickly. So, right, and checking in with them as far as support, this is somebody who doesn't always ask for help, right? So if you know what kind of support they need, you might be able to bring in resources from maybe other groups. They might not think like that. Right, so let's make sure that we're enabling them to make decisions and to execute as the company needs. So 2 great ideas there. Anything else, Laura?
Yeah, a couple things. So I'm going to shorten one person's paragraph here, but he said, I'd really let them know that all I expect from them is the best that they can do, and ask them to recognize that we still have customers to take care of, and just keep doing what you do and let me deal with the idiot salesman. um,
Somebody has a history with the sales guy, right?
I think so.
But the thing I love about that though, let's just say 95% of the time on the job, they're built for this role, right? And for us, all of a sudden, have these expectations they're going to be this, innovative, creative thinker and multitasking. This is their world. They're very good at it. So let's support them as far as what they're able to do, right? So I think that's absolutely critically important. And I'm not going to say anything about the sales guy because, boy, if you got a good sales guy, you love your sales guy. So I'll just kind of put it there. But the other thing to think about is enabling their decision-making process. So if you think about the continuum of consensus-style decision-making, consultative, authoritative, directive on the other end, typically we like our leaders to make decisions, right? We want them to be empowered. We want them to take ownership and have accountability. A situation like this, you know what? Let's take their ideas. It's okay for you to step in. In crisis situations, we can move a little bit more to the directive side, take some of the pressure off of them and say, hey, listen, you're great at this. I'm here to support you, and not expect them to be a completely different person. I think that's an absolutely fantastic thought. So anything else?
Check in and see what's causing delays. Is it materials or is it manpower? And also maybe this person doesn't need to be a perfectionist at this point, and you can ease up to keep production moving forward.
Yeah, so making sure you're asking the questions, get to the detail. They're probably going to have the detail, which is fantastic. It's really interesting. So it goes back to expressing confidence in them. So high D formality, that low B extroversion type, these are like data-driven people. So let's say, hey, I trust your judgment. So instead of needing 95% of the data in, we're at a 65% place, right? Now, they're not going to make a decision at 65, but maybe you can get it down to 80. So it is expressing your confidence in them, resetting your expectations, and then allowing them to move forward because you're taking the pressure off of making mistakes. That's absolutely fantastic. Very good. So let's take a shot at the customer support lead, right? So how do you bring your customer support lead back into the work mindset? So looking at their PI profile, right? Low A dominance, high B extroversion. This is a team-oriented person, right? This is a person who is there to support the team. This is also somebody who really has a need for that social connection, right? Collaborative, interactive. That FaceTime is probably very important for somebody like this. This is also somebody who low A dominance, HiC Patients, much more responsive, reactive, probably a really good listener, but somebody who isn't always as proactive. They're really more reacting to the situation and responding, which might be quite suitable for the role. And then you also have this interesting HiC Patients, low D formality, kind of relaxed to the rules. So this is somebody who's also kind of flexible in their approach, right? So this is the collaborator profile. So social, team-oriented, steady, even, and somebody generally doesn't create a lot of, tension or conflict. You can kind of go with it. So think about this, give you a couple minutes. How can you bring your customer support lead back into a work mindset? Uh, 20 more seconds or so.
Yeah, we've got a couple of responses.
All right. What do you have, Laura?
So I would schedule frequent but short team calls and spend a few minutes on small talk and ensure that the team stays connected, and increase communication and the use of collaboration tools. That's the first one.
Well, let's respond to that. So this is a highly social, team-oriented person. So yeah, right, we looked at that, the Menti survey, feeling isolated, perhaps alone. This is going to be somebody who's going to have that feeling. You're changing their social network, right? And work is partly social for a lot of folks. It's how they get work done. It's how they, network and, enable themselves to be successful in the workplace. So more frequent conversations, meetings, thinking about, FaceTime, thinking about Zoom video, let's keep them engaged. Let's really bring them in back into the workplace. Great. What else?
Communicate the sense of urgency that airports need this and the company needs this.
Yeah. So think about what drives somebody like this. Team, right? People-oriented, collaborative. So just that simple communication that your team needs you, your company needs you, and your customers need you. They're the customer support lead, right? That's probably going to re-engage someone, right? So you could have that firm conversation. Hey, where are you? We need you here. We need you focused. But what I would recommend is one part is checking in with them, right? Because they might be taking care of the family. There might be situations we don't know about. So let's check in with them. Let's make that social connection. And then let's really think about what drives them on the business side. And it is people, team, organization, customer. So let's make that connection for them and try to bring them in. Perfect. Any other thoughts, recommendations?
Maybe one only other one that I can say. Set expectations. Sorry. Set expectations. Business has to continue, and they need to address, X number of calls a day. It also states, and also I might be reading this wrong, but maybe time to get rid of dead weight.
Well, yeah. So a couple parts to that. One is this is a crisis. You don't know what's going on. Let's check in. Let's try to bring them in. So I would say steps 1, step 2. But at the end of the day, we do need people focused, right? So let's enable them. Let's try to see how we can support them and bring them in. I'd say that's the first place. But then at that point, then it comes into let's set expectations. Let's set some metrics, and let's see, then let's see where we go from there. So, I'd say there are a couple steps, but then at that one point, you really need to say, we need this. This is when you really need to step up. Everybody in this company needs to step up. And then if you see somebody isn't, then there's a whole other conversation that follows. So, not to be too soft, right? But I would start a little bit more on the softer side and then work my way there. But that's one person's opinion. So, I think these are all great ideas. I would also think about, are there ways to bring them into maybe ad hoc teams, any kind of team approach, anything that is more collaborative. That's the person you might want on it. And maybe they need to have some kind of different interaction with customers, right? They're very flexible. So you might have a lot of unique customer situations. They might be perfectly suited for those types of conversations as well. All right, well, good stuff. Love the conversation. So a couple other thoughts here. Around rapid change and uncertainty. And as Laura and I were, thinking about this webinar, it's interesting because when you look at a low C patients person who they might be off in many different directions, they need some focus, right? They need to be clear on priorities. They might even get burned out because they're so, spread so thin. High C patients people, they can get overwhelmed because they're more, they're more built to just focus on a few key priorities at any one time. So if things keep flying in, they need priorities, they need refocusing as well. High D formality people, they're used to structure, they need that clarity. And then low D formality people, they might, kind of be bending the rules and doing things in, that kind of rogue style. So when you put all this together, prioritization and focus, it really transcends profile. This is a time when everybody really needs to be brought in and have some clarity. So let's take a look at the to-do list. What are they working on? What are they focused on? right? Let's clarify their main job responsibilities, and maybe it's evolved. Maybe there are some changes. You know, what are their key performance indicators? Maybe that's different. So let's think about where they need to focus their time and make sure everybody is aligned. You know, if you have a formal system to document it, you know, even better. You know, and that's also a way to hold people accountable. We want to make sure that people are really contributing to the organization at this time of need. And then empower pushback. So this is a tricky one. You know, people want to roll up their sleeves and do whatever it takes, right? This is crisis mode, and some people are really built for that. But if you're pulled in so many directions, because there's a, you know, we saw in that poll as well, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of information, almost too much information, too many ideas at times. So we have to also be able to push back and to focus on what really is important. And I would also say, and you know, I think we've seen that at Cornerstone, we've been trying to get back to a new normal. So we have meetings, we have communication styles and patterns. Many of them have been broken because of this situation. We need to get back to making sure we're communicating with each other effectively, we're passing on information. So let's get back to structure, you know, and clarity, and that's going to help everybody to do better. So to reemphasize what Laura had said before, we're here for you, right? Any of you who have worked with us, I'm assuming it's everybody here, you know, you can just give us a call. You want to bounce some ideas off of us, we're here. You know, reach out to your consultant. If you want a bigger program, let's talk about it. If you just want some thought, some kind of guidance, or just a sounding board, we're here for that as well. So you'll be receiving more information from us. There's a resilience and change program you'll be hearing out about that'll probably roll out in a couple of weeks as well. So any other questions in, Laura, at this point?
Nope, that's it.
Well, thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. Happy Friday, and enjoy your probably well-deserved weekends. Thank you, Laura.
Bye. Take care, guys.
Thanks all.